Welcome to Higher Intelligence, smart takes on AI for the next generation campus. I'm JC Bonilla, EdTech executive, data scientist, and educator. 8 weeks, 5 product releases, one very clear signal about where Anthropic is going. For the victory, they are really changing the configuration of the tech stack in AI, and they've done it in a speed that it's unthinkable. Claude did not just release new features, by the way. It got into operating system mode, the AI OS mode, if you will. And this past week, more drops came to us, and another drop. The speed in which cursor or apps or your desktop of your work, now it's basically being a plugin native to AI or agentic. It's really changing the game. The same week that happened, OpenAI killed its most hyped creative product. And the contrast between the two moves tells us something very important where the AI race is going. So today, I went deep into my Element network to bring the person that I spent all my days talking about where the AI tech stack is, because we're using it and we're breaking it and we're actually in it. So today my guest is the person who runs AI operations at Element 451 and lives inside Claude pretty much every day. Doug Smith, welcome back to Higher Intelligence. How you doing, pal?
I'm fantastic. Excited to be here.
Remind everybody what a head of AI operations do. What does that mean? Sounds such a cool thing, but what's your day look like, man?
Yeah, a lot of it's enablement of our internal teams to be able to leverage and get the most out of AI to match ultimately what we're doing with a product that serves our customers. But how can we do similar and or more creative things inside of our own ecosystem to offload repetitive, low-value work and get our people working in top of license. And that's through the development of new AI solutions, rolling out of AI solutions, and then just general education of all the wonderful offerings we have from a tooling standpoint to get people to be able to work top of license.
Awesome, Doug. Doug, just high level, we're going to go deeper, but where's your head on this? I am going to give you a premise just to kick off and frame the conversation, right? Obviously, what Claude is doing, it's very special, right? It's thinking platforms, thinking stack, is thinking multi-mode, is thinking crons and actioning with time delays. Just an incredible POV. This brings me back to my PC days as a youngster in Costa Rica, right? When I was introduced to the PC world, specifically, 186, right? 286 is that what it's called, that infrastructure? And, the compute was being invented with, I had prompt, I had disks, memory. Like, think about the attributes that we have, memory and disk and access, and how do you basically interact it? Look, I used to play games in my 186, and I think it was a 5.5 disk that gets entered into an IBM. And then I need to basically DOS command my way into the game. And then I start playing Decathlon and Pac-Mans and things of that sort. Fast forward to today. Why that's relevant is that we're speaking about similar things. How the memory, how the compute, how the UX, and this operative system is broken up. Let me take you back. It really feels like I'm starting to see again the difference between Unix, Linux, right? You can do everything. Microsoft to the lens of it's an operating system that it will be compatible with everything, or next level type of compute with a philosophy of centralization and kind of intactness, right? With Apple OS. So that's how I perceive it. Oh my gosh, this thing is being built and remind me of those days. What was your kind of high level take on these things?
Yeah, it's the best way of viewing it. It's this ability to it's blending so many sort of breakthroughs over the past, let's say, 15, 20 years. This thought that you have this capability of working with a solution that is able to integrate with multiple apps, and apps being web apps. Now it's the actual computer itself. So, this sort of massive emergence of RPA back, 15, 20 years ago of, hey, we'll be able to do this. Well, the agents are capable of doing that. So it's able to offload additional work. The ability to, let's say, willingness of individuals to give over the access to their computer to an agent to perform work. I think that's a psychological thing that everyone's like, no way people would do that. That's not rational. That's not logical. There's so many security issues with that. Some of those still exist, obviously, but to a great extent, it's it's really this sort of unbundling all of this destructured sort of mosaic of technologies to, at the end of the day, allow for a person to do work, creative work, human work, and offloading of that sort of repetitive thing. And it's just a great amplifier of, I have an idea, I need a thing to do, I can get it done without necessarily having the technical acumen to be able to stitch all of those things together, because Claude is providing a framework by which allows for that, both when you're in front of it as well as when you're away from it, in terms of the, in essence, tunneling in via your Claude app on your phone to your machine to be able to have remote access. Obviously, there's some challenges on the enterprise for folks to be able to do such a thing. And then obviously locking things down. That's why to a great extent, you're not seeing that in the business and enterprise offering for Claude. But for Pro and Max users, they have the capability of doing it. And at the end of the day, I think the big hot nudge here was OpenClaw. OpenClaw, NemoClaw, et cetera, really forced Anthropic to say, this is our moment to continue to maintain our edge, and let's lean into this. And what are the key power features?
This is an important point that you just brought up, and we're going to go through some of these releases in deeper states. But friends, think about 5 really important things. There's more, actually 8 drops, but we're going to be kind of covering this as a group of 5s. How Claude is thinking about computer use, right? And now Claude can control your Mac specifically. It's only for Mac. It's not the browser. Actually, your clicks, your mouse, types, browses, does everything. This patch is the other thing that we saw, that in which Claude is able to task from your phone, your desktop. So literally, you're able to not do a prompt on your phone. It's literally you're commanding your desktop through your phone. Remote control is very similar. Channels is the other thing. We're starting to see Claude now having applicability in native connections with Discord, Telegram, async autonomous persistent actions, and a scheduled tasks. This idea of running your prompts, your AI workflows with a cadence, daily briefings, weekly automated research, whatnot. And these, as Doc mentioned, stems from 2 important bodies of work. Co-work, something that Claude did about 8 weeks ago, was it? In February, right? They launched Co-work as a research tool that allowed you to do basically repeatable agentic things, and it was kind of slow and clunky. But then a competitor, which we also have a show on it, is called OpenClaw, that allows us to understand how this operative system, if you will, right, this platform, and Doug was here to discuss that a few weeks ago, and how the soul file and the tick and the heartbeat file in this kind of operative system can be set out for agents to operate next level. 2 important things have sped up all these really, really interesting things that Claude has said, right? So before we go into the next story, Doug, from your side, how do you explain what co-work is, which is a foundational aspect of what Claude is doing, and how do you explain what OpenClaw is? 30 seconds for each.
Yeah, so co-work was set up with a predefined set of skills that an agent could go to perform work. Open Excel, do analysis, run Python. So this really like steroid version of GPT, so to speak, pre-built out logical skills that work robustly, consistently, on top of the strong LLM models, Opus and or Sonnet 4.6. OpenClaw is something different, open source solution that allows for you to be able to put into your computer or a virtual computer a agentic system that is able to go act and do very far beyond what you would normally experience, where you're always having to say, go do the next thing, go do the next thing. You just say, hey, I need you to go execute this. It goes and does that, and it figures out how to do that with the skills and tooling that you have given to it, and or it will just go download the skills and tooling for you, which is a huge security risk. But it has this thing of get the job done, and I think that's the real thing that we're seeing through this, is that get the job done work with the power of the LLMs is here. And the ability to do the digital work has really, really come forward, I would say, in light years in the past 90 days.
Love that. So here's the premise, everybody. As I mentioned, Microsoft answered the question of, in 1990s, right, with Windows and Office, of what an off OS and point solutions could look like. Apple answered in 2000s with iOS, Google, I would say they actually answered in 2010 with Android and Chrome. Every decade we've been seeing these wins on the platform layer. So today, 2026, my claim in today's episode is that Anthropic is making the right moves to win that battle. So in 2026, we're starting to see the next one. So let's tell the first story and let's go deeper into what Claude computer use is. March 2024, just basically last week, Anthropic launches Claude computer use. And the coverage, it's been incredible. Every headline says, Claude now can use your Mac. That is technically true, but actually, here's what it really means. Claude can take over your cursor. It can move windows. It can click icons. It can type into fields. It can open an application, navigate an interface, complete any workflow natively in iOS. This is being done without APIs, any really plugins, without any pre-built connectors to the software operating system. If not a specific integration exists, right, your computer use will fall back. Actually, let me take that statement back. Claude just is taking over your computer as if someone else is doing a remote session. It's shipped inside Claude Cowork. So it's one of these features that you can access to Claude Cowork, that foundational work that we saw. So it's a desktop productivity tool. And Claude Code, the developer agent, also is operating in parallel. Here's the first layer of platform, Doc. So it's a Mac first move for now. Probably Windows support coming very, very soon. It's described internally as somewhat slow for some users. I have not used it myself, Doug. I wonder if you have. But the trajectory is clear. The speed to improve, the scope expansion, and how trust in this platform is starting to take on human tasks and the experience that we have. So, Doug, looking at you, my friend, you've run operations in AI. Talk to me about how this computer use actually fell that drop. Have you used it? And what do you think about Claude's inherent ability to take over a desktop or a laptop, specifically Mac today?
To a great extent, I find it to be just a significant time saver. Because if you're watching what is sort of going on behind the scenes, and you can sort of see this with if you were leveraging the Claude code with inside of the terminal and the underlying code that it's running against it, it's using a lot of grip, right? So it's like, hey, look for files that look like this with inside of this directory. So a lot of what we do is it's basically file retrieval type of work. So we're looking in subsets, subfolders, and things like that to be able to do the next step of relative work based off of context. Because I think that's one of the clear things that's being designed here too, is that how Claude is structuring this and the work that it's trying to do the work, it needs to have the context. Where is the context with inside of the files? How do we get access to it? So we need the capability to be able to navigate through the on-prem computer and or the virtual machine, so to speak, that is operating. And it's just fascinating to me in terms of the speed and execution that it has. Now, that said, interesting things that I've been witnessing is the sort of like creation and naming of folders gets a little bit wonky. So it itself loves
messy.
It's messy.
It leaves a footprint in your system.
Yes.
I couldn't find a folder yesterday that he created, so it was like that type of thing.
And it's where is the folder?
Where is the folder?
Some
Where is
situations.
the file? Yeah.
So you have to be a little cognizant of where and how it's operating. Is it operating inside of a Git? Is it operating with inside of your existing computer, or is it operating potentially even inside of Google Workspace? Like, these are all things that it has the capability of doing. It's like where the flow of work is and where do things need to be maintained. So there is that sort of, let's say, naiveness or sort of infancy piece in terms of ensuring that it's working consistently in the right location.
So you're saying, what I'm hearing from you is like, okay, this works. It has a vibe of file management, and it's actually useful because a lot of us spend time there. Talk to me about like your head of productivity and also bring the higher education use case. It's slow right now, so I wonder, would you actually roll it out? But specifically, if you put on, let's not put on the Element hat, let's put on our partner hat. SIS systems, financial aid, advisement, legacy systems, the works. Where would you start trying this? If someone wants to experiment this, never mind the security, just on a safe environment, where would you say, hey, try it here? What comes to mind?
We know that some of the iPads requirements are coming up a lot faster than people were anticipating. So we don't know. So I have to pull a lot more data than I've ever had to pull in a much shorter time frame than I've probably had to do before. I got to jump into my SIS, allow for Claude to be able to help navigate and build some of that reporting out. You give it, here is how iPads reports. This is what we do. Here is where the sort of structure and logic is. Go build this for me. And potentially, again, big asterisk on it, it's probably going to get pretty darn close to being able to help you with navigating through that. Now, that said, there's probably some security challenges that your organization would have in terms of downloading that and giving it access to that. There's a ton of personally identifiable information, so that's a big, again, giant red flag. That withstanding, this ability of, hey, this solution can come in, it can operate on my computer, it can have access to me, I can watch it do the work around it. Really interesting, really interesting. I've watched it actually work in Chrome extension of working within the web browser of like navigating, clicking, doing things, spins up its own tabs and is trying to do select type of work. So again, this capability of like, I need to do this, how do I get there? It potentially create parallelization. So I would not be surprised within the next 12 to 24 months. That's the sort of norm of, and I give credence to Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella. He talked about this. He's like, at the end of the day, to a great extent, a lot of web applications that are out there and solutions that are out there are just relational tables, and our operating system will be agents. And he was very spot on. Granted, Microsoft hasn't provided that environment with Copilot. Claude is very much closer to that in terms of here's an agentic layer that's able to work with relational tables and data and be able to execute against that.
So, Doug, I think that's a great use case. I was responsible for doing the CGS, the Council of Graduate Schools reporting. This is how you get actually, and also the US News and World reporting. And this is basically how computer use is not OpenAI operator. It goes beyond the ability to go and surf the web, right? Because you get a form, 3 things, maybe I need to research or go into a web link, right? And then there's a password, you can pass that. 3 other questions, I needed to email 5 people to kind of get the answer in that exchange. I'm looking for this information, blah, blah, blah. And then the other 3 questions were buried inside a spreadsheet in my computer. So that kind of workflow and the idea to go online, search, the idea to go and quest and interact with someone via email, or go into your root files with whatever file structure and get that information extracted, rationalize on it, and then put it back on the form, and then actually click on send with maybe a human in the loop review. That's literally what computer use will be able to do. So computer use is the most visible piece right now. And I think, again, only available for Mac users, but probably Microsoft forthcoming. But it did not come out of nowhere, right? The final layer of the stack that Anthropic has been building in plain sight for 8 weeks is, wait for it, what is it? Cowork. Cowork has been around. So I wanted to go deeper here on Cowork because Cowork, it's the foundational piece. It's basically how agentic workflows will come in, right? And it's literally a desktop application that automates workflows using plugins and connectors, not only chatbots, and a desktop agent. This is where plugins, skills, MCP, and all these layer communication or acronyms are important, Doc, right? So we know that a skill is something that you can acquire from a hub or you can create. And these skills are basically codified workflows that an agent does or AI does for you. So AKA a skill is an agent, right? And it's a codified workflow. Plugins via MCPs or whatnot, we've spoken about Dota, is how AI is now able to go out and connect to the system natively and pull their data. So now I can do external communications with my Slack, with Teams, with Microsoft, with Excel products, with my Intercom, with whatever project management tools I have. So it's a really interesting layer. So let me actually stop here let's go deeper into how you're using Cowork today, right? I find that I spend 70% of my time on in Claude, the normal chat, and maybe 30% on Cowork. I'm still not on code, but this is kind of how I'm spending my time. And the proxy is This is a repetitive task. Let me go ahead and do it. How are you using Cowork?
Yeah. So Cowork, I would say where I fit in with Cowork is understanding the task that's withstanding, which is the work, let's say some type of a deep analysis, looking at our existing customers and around product usage, and understanding that the chat piece might not be able to go query and grab additional data to enrich to complete the analysis. So Cowork has that ability via the connectors to go read additional information from Slack, from HubSpot, from other systems connected with inside of that to enrich that to now build a better contextual layer. And it has the additional skill sets. And at the end of the day, creating really nice looking presentations, very crisp, clean presentations, really crisp, clean Excel documents, so to speak. And in theory, obviously, you can create artifacts and things of that nature, which are just fancy spreadsheets. But that sort of more formative work, something that you would anticipate somebody who's 3 to 5 years into their job to be able to go execute, multi-stepped task, multi-step types of analysis that aren't just simply, hey, go look at this, give me this answer. It is look at these multiple pieces of data sets, help me reason and rationale against it, and then let's develop a high level, to the point, executive level report against it to be able to communicate what's happening behind the data. And I look at this, a lot of this type of work, I'm saying things that would have taken days to do are being crushed into an hour
Minutes.
of potential work.
Do you have a favorite? Do you have your favorite Cowork routine that you run?
I will say the one that brought me the most joy was one of the connections with Linear.
Linear is our project management tool in the company.
Yeah, so there was a project we were working on, and we want to sort of segment out our customer population into select sets. If I was going to have to do that in Linear, I was going to have to go in and manually create each one of those, create each one of the individual records, etc. I gave to Cowork and said, hey, this is what we're trying to execute. Here is the defined logic against it. I even gave it a screenshot from JC of this is what the criteria sets look like. Bucket each one of these into the respective piece and then go push that and then tag all the respective individuals in Linear based off of the spreadsheet of who was there. That work is all doable, but it would have taken a day or two just to populate, and we were able to execute
Cowork because it's repetitive versus
it was, yes,
because you could have accomplished that in the regular chat experience for Claude.
With the linear component push and the consistent updating with the context window, it would have definitely fallen apart. The other thing that we were starting to do, and we've shifted it to Claude Code just for speed and execution purposes, was looking at specific companies for certain types of signals, and you could simply set that as schedule. So, hey, it runs out to HubSpot, looks at a select set of custom fields. So again, that's the unique thing, select set of custom fields, that tacit knowledge of what I'm looking for, and then give me a summary of each one of those on a consistent basis. And it needs to be in this exact structure every single time. So you have this very, very clean workflow that you're able to knock out with it. And that's the real value of what we were talking about here with the skills piece, is that you are taking the tacit knowledge of how you operate and things that you do and how your systems are set up and being able to overlay that with the LLM so that it has context to go execute that on a consistent basis. And that's just a huge unlock. The potential applicability for sort of deduplication work, data cleanup purposes, it's all sitting there, which is, we've done this a little bit with our prospecting database of looking at, hey, here's IPEDS numbers, here are a whole bunch of here's a bunch of domains. Are any of these actually related to entities? And if so, can we help identify where these need to be merged? And doing that at scale, which is, that's lower order work, but with Cowork, you're able to execute it much faster than you would have ever been able to do it with a human sort of going and doing this work. I remember this time, it would have been probably 10, 12 years ago. We would have third-party offshore groups that was their whole job, was just deduplication work.
It's incredible how much, yeah.
Yeah, like here's the spreadsheet,
Yep.
narrow it down and move forward. And that's the real offload here of I would have to manage that work output that they were doing. And it's the same situation now as I'm managing the work output of saying like, oh, you were a little bit wrong here. Let me give you that feedback. And the benefit of this is the feedback I give is now codified into that skill. So this feedback loop, this reinforced learning practice, you're really able to get so much further, and you have a little bit less error-prone risk that you would have if you had multiple, sadly, humans working on pieces of that. But again, that's lower order work. And the benefit of that, though, is it's sort of unburdened me to be able to do more creative work and more impactful work, because that becomes less of a blocker for us.
Indeed. All right. So, friends, we spoke about the productivity layer, the foundational work that is set in this Claude OS, right? It's Claude Cowork, a desktop application that automates workflows using plugins and connectors, not a chatbot, a desktop agent. Let me walk you through the layers, because the layers kept on going. This was about 8 weeks ago. And a few weeks later, the enterprise SaaS market rolls out. This is domain-specific plugins giving enterprise clients access to tools built for the industry. In other words, you're able to start getting these plugins and these skills in a marketplace. So whatever Doug is doing, maybe he wants to come and push it out there, and then another organization is benefiting from it. A school, you can come and grab all the skills from other schools, or you can get the native skills and plugins that Claude may be doing. Then, Claude Code review launches. We've spoken about this about 2 weeks ago. Automatic securely review directly inside the pull request of the workflow. In other words, the transaction of making code, it's always you produce it, you discover, you go into a sprint, and there's a review cycle. And reviews are super, super difficult. Claude reviews it, it flags issues, suggests fixes. No human reviewer required in this first pass. I'm not finished, Doug. Then, Claude Dispatch, a mobile feature. You text Claude from your phone, from wherever you are in the world, and it remotely controls your computer. Look how the interconnectivity in the layers is starting to take place. Your Mac is running back at the office, you're in the airport, you text Claude, poof, your Mac does the work. And then, this week, computer use. The universal fallback. When no specific connector exists, Claude takes the cursor, right? So underneath it all, Claude Code as the developer layer, Claude 4.0 Opus, the brain, right? And Sonnet, the intelligence models, and MCP integrations as a protocol. I mean, literally, this is the Claude OS stack. This is it. This is, in my opinion, the AI stack. So, Doug, you've been watching these releases from your side. 8 weeks, 5 products, kind of super quick review. What's your read? Is this the platform? Is this deliberately to be that platform that I'm basically trying to allude to? Or just basically a company is shipping super fast and we're connecting the dots of this is the strategy on that? What's your read on this?
I would say this. Anthropic right now is definitely setting the standard. That said, cannot imagine that Google, OpenAI aren't nipping pretty close to it. And I'll say incredible experiences that each one of these are able to do. Wildly disruptive if you're somebody that's in the market and own, let's say, any of the respective names that sort of touch this space in terms of SaaS-based solutions, specifically the security ones I know got really, really hammered for their offering. Because at the end of the day, Anthropic is looking at it through the lens of what is one of the best practices we could apply here, which is let's create LLM as a judge against our own work. So this is amplification of best practices at scale. And it's just, they're hitting so many of the right pain points at the right time. And that's what I love about what I'm seeing from them from an innovative standpoint. And I have to say this, I think from a consumer or from a business user standpoint, it's all the better for all of us of this sort of like, they're pushing the needle so far that it's going to require the competitive ecosystem to also push the needle and really step in, that regardless of the system that you're operating on, you're going to have a better solution at the end of the day. I see little artifacts of it right now with OpenAI rolled out skills really quickly. There's probably going to be some works, I imagine, with OpenClaw, the way in which it's part of their AI foundation of how they try to apply this. Claude right now is definitely accelerating very, very quickly, and I think it's very demonstrative in terms of what they've seen from a revenue standpoint, just absolutely taking off. I mean, the fact that Anthropic at this juncture is generating as much revenue growth and from a revenue standpoint as bigger names as Snowflake that took decades to get to where they're at. That's the wild thing that you think of right now. these like legacy stalwarts of the IT space that Anthropic has been able, like a flash within 45 days or so, really be able to just accelerate through.
All right, let's review it all, Doug, here. The intelligence layer, Claude 4.6 Opus or Sonnet. These are basically the premier frontier models that right now are powering everything. On top of that, the protocol layer, MCP, Model Context Protocol. This is basically the universal standard connecting AI tools to data. This is very similar to like HTTP, how if you think about how websites connecting to each other, so that's actually the modern era, right? For the developers, we have Claude, right, which is basically a command line agentic coding automation. But we also have a security, or I guess a testing layer, which is the Claude Code Review, then automated PR review, and it looks at detection as well. There's an enterprise layer, enterprise SaaS marketplace. This is where you can have domain-specific plugins, skills, legal, finance, HR, the works. Then we go into the productivity layer, Claude Cowork. We spoke about that. Mobility layer, Claude Dispatch, that's the whole remote aspect, how you can use Claude from your phone to control your Mac. And then last but not least, Claude Computer Use, which is cursor control, app navigation, full desktop automation. So this is it, right? And it's a really incredible thing to see unfold under our eyes. Let's switch to the competitive landscape. While we see these things and we're talking about the incredible work that is taking place with Anthropic and how we're benefiting from it, the competitive story is very interesting. It came from the other side. The same week that Anthropic launched its most ambitious products, right, OpenAI killed one of his most famous ones. So March 24th, the same day that Computer Use launches, OpenAI announces they will be shutting down Sora. Sora app closes April 26th, in a few weeks from now. Sora app API will shut down in September the 24th. This is the most hyped API video generation product that we thought in history, right? And is being discontinued 18 months later. The reason why? Cost rationalization. By the way, in the past weeks, everybody has had their own caricature of themselves, right? And then it's been all over social media. That's not longer going to be available in about 2 weeks. That's kind of the impact that you may be seeing from the consumer side. But there's a ton of products that are being fueled probably by this type of video generation. And it's a cost rationalization, right? OpenAI needs to funnel compute towards coding tools, compete with Anthropic in this case, as opposed to creating this business to consumer as fun type of things, hedonic type of technologies, pleasure, right? That create fun memes and social media moments. Doug, what's your take on this, right? Is this vis-to-vis competitive? Do you think that this decision was in the works 4 months ago and just happened to be a coincidence that it was in the same day? What say you, my friend?
Yeah, I think some of it's serendipity, but understanding like what it takes to produce Sora, I think will probably give people some context to this, of that OpenAI was losing $15 million a day plus by running Sora, because the computational workload to make a 3D world for an image is just multitudes larger than simply moving text from one place to another and encoding and transforming it. It's just significantly, wildly more complex of a task. And frankly, I think OpenAI is dealing with the realities of what they themselves are wanting to pursue, which is a public market IPO. And as a function of that, there's much more scrutiny on where your investments are going to be going. So you cannot necessarily fund the fund, so to speak. And I also saw pieces, Dance and a couple of the other players that are out there were coming out with very, very comparable, incredible video generation type models. Now, this all comes down to like, what is your core mission? What are you solving for? And I think OpenAI is having this reality of we're not going to be all things to everyone. And we need to be thinking about, if we have finite resources, which, and despite them burning through billions of dollars, they still do have finite resources of what do we need to be executing the most right now? And that's still serving that sort of what I characterize as text-based work. And it just, I'll say it's not the key thing. And they were never really able to make it a revenue generating engine. That said, I can imagine within the next probably 12 to 24 months, that comes back in some kind of variation with a commercial wraparound for this, which is the state of potentially the film industry and media industry is willing to pay a significant premium to have access to a solution like that. Now, that said, the number of businesses that probably are going to really get hurt by this, where they were generating this as an agency, are probably going to be pretty significant. So that's the challenge of operating on a platform. I think it has a lot of similar vibes to Facebook or Apple and the App Store when it decided to modify what you could and couldn't do. This, you work on a platform, it can restrict what you can do and how you operate.
Well, look at the collateral damage, right? In this case, Disney is the most infamous one, right? So the media company Disney, were in discussions. I don't know if actually money was transaction, but it was $1 billion investment stake into OpenAI, totally tied to Sora, right? Because of the creative. Sora is supposed to reshape how creative industries work and how consumer attention will be generated. And when Sora gets killed, Disney walked away, right? And $1 billion of creative industry validation kind of disappears from the table, right? So many other things in that collateral damage and space will start flourishing. Doug, from your point of view in higher education, right? Any takeaways? Maybe you have a Sora pilot by a marketing team, creative departments. What say you to an institution who may need to think about offloading Sora-like workflows that were powered by this technology? Any recommendations? How should I think about this?
Yeah, there's a good number of providers that are out there. And to be frank, those providers also give a higher degree of, I'd say, specific instruction that allow for that to be more performant. And I just look at this. This is a simple timing thing between 3 to 6 months. Even open source models are becoming drastically more performant that are out there. And I'm sitting there trying to think of, again, Dance jumps to mind of a really, really strong solution. That's a Chinese-based group, if I recall. It's going to be coming out of Alibaba or Baidu. And again, so there's providers that are out there that have similar type solutions. And then I'm completely struggling on one or two of these other names that fit the same mold of, hey, here's my character, here's how I roll through that. That is still very, very present, still available. And at the end of the day, a little bit of an opening of the door for Google and Google Veo, a very, very strong performant video generation platform that they are able to offer. And Google, I think, frankly, is in a slightly different situation as it relates to fundability of its own solutions. And they've made some incredible breakthroughs more recently with how they're improving the performance of their chips with the quant piece that they released about a week and a half ago. So that there's a whole bunch underneath the hood. I wouldn't be overly worried. I will say I'm sad about this. I loved Sora during the holiday seasons. I made a whole bunch of really fun Santa Claus coming in through the Ring camera for my friends, saying their kids' names and then leaving, that kind of fun stuff. But again, that's the fun. And sadly, OpenAI is not going to be able to fund the fun for the time being.
And Doug's point is super valid for those of you listening as it relates to Sora. Just know that creative tools for higher education probably will move not to China, although there's a lot of offers there, but start looking at the Adobe tech stack. I think they're doing really incredible things on the creative asset. I have a whole episode with Michael McGettrick where we discuss some of those things. So what is happening here, Doug, I feel that OpenAI and Claude start to hint we're going for this type of consumer or enterprise, and the value creation is work automation, coding, software development, and tools and AI may start being specialized. So Adobe now really has a chance to come and put their flag on this AI space and say, we own the creative tools. And so higher education creatives, if Sora is discontinued, you'll be affected. I recommend you also start looking at natively AI tools in.
Yeah, and those names that I was struggling with, Runway, Pika, and Kling, all really good solutions that are out there. And then folks that were doing the avatar, HeyGen and Synthesia, the sort of the talking avatar that overlays. So you look at it like there's those players are still there, and at the end of the day, Runway much longer format ability to put in essence, a whole series together. And you're seeing some of that on YouTube where people are generating these long format videos, the alternative ending, so to speak, of content for their favorite Star Wars, whatever movie it might have been that they created the alternative ending, and they're leveraging those solutions to execute on that.
Two names to drop. Remember that Doug also mentioned Google. So Nano Banano, an incredible AI platform to basically develop and redesign
imagery, and then Veo,
but also Stitch.
Yeah,
Doug. So it's Stitch, which actually did an incredible run on Figma, right? And Stitch, it's power and redesign and image generation capabilities as well. So other tools for you to start exploring. Doug, one last question, and then we'll wrap up. I'm trying to appeal to the person buying technology at higher education, right? So when they start seeing this platform wars, right? And then many campuses back in the day needed to commit, I'm going to be a PC campus or I'm going to be a Mac campus. And you've seen those computer labs that are all Macs or all PCs. And, those are important decisions that took place over a 20-year period. It took time. But as an IT person, you started to basically make those decisions. And then campuses not divided, but they basically their preferences. As relates to AI, the platform war is interesting. So how do I start thinking about consolidating against a tech stack? Maybe I'm going to be all Anthropic, or maybe I'm going to start waiting for the OpenAI to consolidate their super app, right? Both companies are trying to do layers, and they're inventing the environment. So what does that mean for higher education? Is this a signal for me to consolidate? Do I just wait because it's too nuanced and is emerging? What is the vendor landscape in the strategic direction today? And what is the signal that someone who buys this, builds this, needs to be thinking about?
Yeah, so with all things, you think about interoperability. Let's be transparent. The sort of two dominant forces in the higher ed space is the Google Workspace and then the Microsoft Dynamic ecosystem. Microsoft, for its own part, has included Anthropic LLM coworker type solution with inside of Copilot. They, I think, sort of folded the hand of, hey, our Copilot isn't as strong. Is there a way in which we can act as a channel partner for Anthropic here? That's a huge unlock here. So again, how many organizations will be shifting away their entire sort of email hosting type situation? I don't know. But you can, I would say, initially, phase one, start with who your incumbents are. It's your Google, it's your Microsoft. Have those conversations, understand what is available to you there. Then go down the pursuit of what is needed and who needs to have access to it. Because what comes with this is great. You give everyone all these licenses, or does the organization have the knowledge and capacity to educate everyone on how to go about using these things? That's the other side of this, of getting everyone sort of in lockstep of, hey, here's the tools that we have, here's how we can use them, here's how we can scale them. And that's a whole routine. That's whole change management. That's a bit of training that goes into it. So again, Claude right now, absolutely crushing it. Check back in 3 to 6 months. Is that the same case? Is OpenAI able to emulate that? Does Google come out with some kind of similar wrath of offerings that amplify and get you right to it? I don't know. But that said, again, think everything through the change management principle of the rollout of any new technology is you got to train people on how to use it. You have to understand where and how it's being used. And I'll say this much, you need to do it sooner than later because people are going to be bringing it into the institution, into the campus. I think everyone's been talking about this, of that your most performant individuals in the organization, you probably want to give them a sort of a token of, hey, you're going to get Claude, you're going to get ChatGPT, and you're going to go amplify and show how we can do this inside of this department, and allow for them to have that creative pursuit and to be able to push the bounds to act as a champion, an AI champion within a department is a really, really thoughtful, logical way. And it can leverage them as being now the train-the-trainer method of being able to educate other folks within the organization on how to scale that, if that's organizational administrative departments or faculty, et cetera, to be able to go do that.
You got it, dog. Thank you so much. It's exactly the conversation we needed right now. So thank you for bringing the ops reality and kind of your experience on these product announcements today. Friends, we're going to wrap up. So here's the thread that I try to run through these stories, right? Anthropic is not building a better chatbot anymore. They're building the interface layer between humans being and their computer environment. Let me say that again. They're building the interface between human beings and their computer environment, aka that AI tech stack. Computer use is proof of concept. Claude AI stack is the architecture. MCP is the protocol that makes it extendable and accessible through the lens of data. And there's collateral. OpenAI is killing Sora in the competitive battle. Who is winning? We will tell. The agentic enterprise infrastructure is the price. So for higher education, what does that mean? The question is not whether to engage with this. Your institutions are already inside this somehow, right? Through the tools. Yes, through the usage, through your students, through deployment, through multiple ways. So pay attention to where these strategic directions is going, because we believe there's intentionality. The OS is being built. The only choice left is which layer you're going to build on. I'm JC Bonilla. This is Higher Intelligence. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to Higher Intelligence. This show is part of the Enrollify network, home to the largest collection of podcasts in higher education. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow. You can find more podcasts, webinars, videos, blogs, and more. Visit enrollify.org and subscribe to get new content sent directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the AI agent platform for higher education. Learn more at element451.com.